Right, one of the most hotly debated topics on motorcycling, apart from tyres and oil choices. Seat comfort. Is a thick, richly padded seat more comfortable than a standard seat with minimal padding? All in all, about 3 centimetres less padding. Stick around if you want to know the answer. As you know, before I took delivery of Bumblebee, I borrowed a demonstrator from Miles Kingsport in Hull for nearly a week. I didn't have a great deal of time with it, but a week was long enough. Now, one of the first things I noticed on my way home from picking it up was just how uncomfortable the seat was. It was horrendous, and it didn't get any better as I continued to ride it. Now, Honda apparently have made a number of changes in the last model year to this bike to address customer complaints. I suspect one of them is the seat, although I can't confirm that, but they certainly changed the brightness and contrast on the clocks. They also changed slightly, I'm told, the position of the foot pegs to make riding more comfortable for people. That might be what makes the difference. I don't know, but I certainly found as soon as I got Bumblebee, that right from the get-go, the standard seat was much more comfortable and I could endure it for longer periods of time. Now, one of the biggest complaints that I get from people historically on this channel is how uncomfortable modern seats are, and I agree with you. Now, normally the solution for this is to either have your seat reupholstered, which is one solution, or most manufacturers offer some sort of touring seat or comfort seat to alleviate the problems that owners can sometimes encounter. Now, when I ordered the taller seat, I was in that kid in a sweet shop phase that you go through when you sat in a dealership ordering all the bits and pieces that you wanted. I misinterpreted this as a comfort seat, but I mean, it was less than £100. I ordered it and I've got it. What I did initially is, for the first 100 miles, I used the standard seat and I found it fine. No complaints with it whatsoever. Around about 100 miles, I put the taller seat on. And I found it not to be as comfortable. The seat design is totally different. If you look at the original seat, at the standard seat, it basically, you've got a peak in the middle here, and your sit bones, which is the protrusions in your at the rear of your pelvis, which have developed over time to provide you with comfortable sitting. You're sitting on bones rather than on flesh. Your sit bones position themselves perfectly on that peak just before it drops off, and the reason for that drop off is that it's designed so that your sit bones are taking the weight and your gluteus, the muscles either side and all the fat that layers over them, isn't being pressurized by the seat, which doesn't restrict blood flow. It allows blood flow to continue reasonably unhindered. And that is the crux of making a comfortable seat. It's not about how thick the padding is, it's about the ergonomics of how the seat is designed. Now, what I discovered with the taller seat is that it's much flatter. The drop-off doesn't actually occur until, I would say, an extra inch from the midpoint. So you've got a much wider, flatter area in the middle, with a more pronounced drop-off at the edges. It is subtle, but when you compare them side by side, you can see it. Now, what I did, I ran the original seat for 100 miles. I then ran the taller seat for 300 miles. Then I swapped back to the original seat for about another 150 miles. I know it's not a totally equal test, but I think 100 miles really is more than enough to, appraise each seat. I was just trying to be thorough, and I definitely found that the taller seat for me is less comfortable than the standard seat, which I don't have a problem with at all. So it's been a thorough test, and what it comes down to is the ergonomics between the two seats, not the amount of padding. Let's just measure the difference between the two and see what we're actually dealing with. Right, so we'll start off by measuring the difference between the two seats. First of all, what you've got to take into account with the standard seat is it's got a very defined curve down to the edges. You've got a peak in the middle where the rider sits. I mean, it's actually quite flat at the back, but where your sit bones position onto the seat, we've got a definite peak here. I mean, it's not really sort of large and pronounced, but it's definitely there. That's where your sit bones actually sit on this saddle when you're riding it. Now at the back, you've just got a standard pillion pet. We'll measure the distance from the ledge of the seat here, and I'm going to have to do this by eye. Hopefully I've situated the camera so you can catch it as well, to see where the tape measure ends in the middle here. Forgive me if I get my head in the way while I'm doing this, but it's difficult giving a camera view and seeing it myself so I can work out what's what. So from dead on the bottom here to the peak in the middle, we've got 7.5 centimetres. So we've got, you know, at that peak there, we've got a total height from the bottom to the top of 7 centimetres. As I've said, both these seats share the same seat pan, because if Honda or any bike manufacturer for that matter was to make a comfort seat with a different seat pan, it would instantly increase the cost of the bike and increase the cost of the accessory seats, because you know you're then producing two separate items for the same job. Right, so let's take some measurements on this now. As you'll see, this is a much flatter seat. From there to there looks dead flat. We've still got a drop off on either side for rider comfort, but this means a much higher or a much bigger area of your backside is going to be flat, sat on a flat surface. So yeah, your sit bones will engage with the saddle here, but also parts of your gluteus will, and I think that is what leads to the numb bum. You know, you're crushing blood capillaries, restricting blood flow, which eventually leads to numbness and discomfort when you're riding. So it's a much less pronounced curve off at either side. What you've got to remember with this saddle is it's designed to raise the height of the rider. Honda have done a good thing by making a bike that in standard configuration is accessible to short riders. It's usually the other way around. Most manufacturers build quite tall bikes and then they offer thinner seats to accommodate shorter riders. Honda have done it the other way around. I presume other manufacturers probably do as well. They've done it the other way around. They've made it very low and accessible for the initial purchase, but if you're a taller rider, for less than £100, you've got the option of a taller seat. And it's not just about the comfort of the seat, it's about how someone with longer legs, you know, their rider triangle changes on the bike, so they situate themselves slightly differently on the saddle, and that's the design that Honda have gone for here. So let's see how much taller this is. Measuring from about there. We've got a total height of 10 centimetres, so yeah, it is what, 2.5 centimetres, getting on for 3 centimetres difference in height. And how they've achieved that, because we've got the same seat pan, is they've simply put more padding in the seat, and it does feel like a much more rigid foam than on the original seat. Right, so Honda claim a 30mm difference in seat height from the tall seat to the standard seat. The tall seat is 30 millimeters higher. You know, taking into account my discrepancies in measuring, because I'm having to do it by eye, I think that's about right. Now, seat height is not necessarily, for a tall rider, is not necessarily about reach to the floor. That doesn't really matter. It does matter for a short rider, because if the seat is too tall, they're unstable at traffic lights and junctions, and they have a greater chance of dropping the bike or losing control in somewhere. For a taller rider, seat height is about the reach down to the foot pegs, because if the foot pegs are too far up, what happens is he's got a more acute bend in his knee while riding to accommodate, you know, that lower seat. He has to bend his knees up further. They end up here, and what that does is it causes him to have to lean back, because it gets uncomfortable in the hips and the knees after a while. And by leaning back, he's taking some of the weight off his sit bones and putting that weight right onto the gluteus. It will also, on this bike especially, cause problems with having a pillion on the back. So a taller seat makes it more comfortable for them to ride, because it changes the angle of the knees and the hip, so they're in a more natural riding position. They can stay bolt upright, as this bike is intended to be, and that allows them to keep the weight on their sit bones rather than you know, having to lean back and putting it on the gluteus and the fat that covers that, cutting off circulation. So the whole premise behind this seat was to increase rider comfort for taller riders. And what I would say, I mean, I've got short legs, like I say, and I'm talking about inseam here, not you know, not from the crotch to the sole of your feet. If you're a 32 inseam, you know, you buy 32 length trousers, and you know, the drop to the bottom, then I would say it's probably worth going for the higher seat. So if you're a 32 inseam or above, I would say, you know, it's definitely worth going for the seat, because that's what it's designed to accommodate. It's not meant to be an all-round comfort or touring seat. If your inseam is shorter than 32, I would stick with your original seat. I don't think you'll get much benefit out of the taller seat, but it's been an interesting experiment, and it does debunk the myth that more padding equals more comfort. That's not how it works. What Honda have done with this seat is that the foam that they've used to actually pad it out to upholster it is much more rigid. It's much firmer than the padding in the standard seat, so that gives a taller rider the support that he requires, but is still putting the weight of his sit bones. I mean, if I lean forward, I can feel I'm squarely on my sit bones, and I'm not putting pressure anywhere else on the bike. But when I'm riding, I'm leaned back just a fraction, and that transfers the weight onto the gluteus and the surrounding fat, which starts to cut off circulation to nerves and the surrounding tissue, which leads to numbness and then discomfort. So, you know, in that respect, it's been a worthwhile experiment. I'll be putting, well, I've put the standard seat back on, and I've been riding with that for the last 150 miles, and the bike is much more comfortable for me. But, you know, it doesn't necessarily follow that more padding is more comfortable than less padding. It's all down to the ergonomics of the seat and the rider triangle. That's the crux of comfort on any motorcycle. It doesn't just apply to the Honda, it applies to any motorcycle where an additional seat is available, either you know, to reduce or increase height, or to increase comfort. And in the case of comfort seats, what they usually do is they use a different density foam with some sort of netting over the top, which consolidates the actual padding to create that extra feeling of comfort. And they do work, but it doesn't necessarily follow that more padding equals more comfort. Right, so I think that's it for this video. I mean, there's only so much you can say about a seat. I've done very thorough 550 mile test comparing the two seats. I'm confident that the standard seat is the one for me. Once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would like and hype this video, and consider becoming a subscriber if you're not already subscribed. I will of course be back next week, so until then, ride safely and I'll see you soon.